What did Israel do once they reached Kadesh the first time? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Deuteronomy on Walking Through the Bible.
The glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, turn to Deuteronomy Chapter 1. We're going to be reading from verses 19 to 25. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Deuteronomy Chapter 1, beginning at verse 19. So we departed from Horeb and went through all the great and terrible wilderness which you saw on the way to the mountains of the Amorites, as the Lord our God had commanded us. Then we came to Kadesh Barnea, and I said to you, You have come to the mountains of the Amorites, which the Lord our God is giving us. Look, the Lord your God has set the land before you. Go up and possess it, as the Lord God of your fathers has spoken to you. Do not fear or be discouraged. And every one of you came near to me and said, Let us send men before us, and let us search out the land for us, and bring back word to us of the way by which we should go up, and of the cities in which we shall come. The plan pleased me well. So I took 12 of your men, one from each tribe, and they departed and went to the mountains, and came to the valley of Eshcol, and spied it out. They also took some of the fruit of the land in their hands, and brought it down to us. And they brought back word to us, saying, It is good land, which the Lord our God is giving us. Israel is in the plains of Moab, receiving the second telling of the law by Moses here in Deuteronomy. Through the first 4 chapters of this retelling is the historical prologue, one that would be needed because this generation is not the one who came out of Egypt, for that generation died in the wilderness. Thus, if Israel was to have a national identity, they needed to know their history. In the last lesson, we had Moses tell Israel where they got their judges from. This retelling would actually provide these judges with authority, not only from Moses, but from God himself, showing the people that they needed to listen to these judges and obey their rulings. Coming now to verse 19, we get Moses retelling Israel's trip from Sinai to Kadesh the first time. The map for this trip is now on the screen. Moses skips the events that happen in Numbers 10 through 12, for they were not important to this retelling. Just for our memory's sake, along the way from Sinai to Kadesh, we have 3 major events. The first occurred in Numbers 11, with the people complaining for food, and God providing them quail. However, upon eating the quail, many died because of their murmuring. In Numbers 11, Moses also appointed elders among the people so that they could help him in his duties. When we discussed this in our study of Numbers, we made the point that this appointment was similar to the appointment of judges in Exodus 18, though I believe different men were involved because this appointment happened almost a year later and is not made in connection to the judges. The final event happened in Numbers 12 with the dissension of Miriam and Aaron. God dealt with Miriam by making her leprous, but she recovered after Moses prayed to the Lord on her behalf. As we said, though, Moses skipped these events here in Deuteronomy, choosing to skip ahead to the reason that Israel hadn't taken the promised land 40 years earlier. Moses described the way that Israel got to Kadesh, which is where they sent spies out from, as that great and terrible wilderness which they saw on their way to the mountains of the Amorites. Although we'll discuss this in the upcoming lessons, I'm putting the map up on the screen again to make a point as to Israel's original route from Sinai to Kadesh. As you can see, although we don't know where all the stops were between Sinai and Kadesh, we can get a general idea. In Numbers, it is described as the wilderness of Paran. I want us to note, though, that Moses described this wilderness as not where Israel had been wandering for 40 years, but as a wilderness that they saw on the way to where they were now, which is in the plains of Moab. This teaches us 2 things. 1, they didn't wander in the wilderness of Paran for 40 years, but very likely remained near Kadesh, as we said in our study of Numbers. And 2, that our placement of Kadesh on the east side of the Jordan River really does make sense and fits closely with the Bible narrative, and I believe better than the traditional place for Kadesh, which is on the west side of the Jordan in the southern Negev. We'll get to the reason why Israel would have traveled through this wilderness on the way to where they are now in future lessons. But for now, let's realize that they traveled through it on the way to Kadesh from Mount Sinai. When they arrived at Kadesh, it was determined that spies would be sent into Canaan so that they could get the lay of the land, know how many people there were in the cities, and actually see that the land was good land. We read of that for the first time in Numbers 13. And so Israel selected 12 men, one from each tribe, to do that. It took them 40 days to fully travel the land and return to Kadesh. Upon their return, they brought back some of the fruit of the land, and as far as the land is concerned, they brought back a good report. But as we know from Numbers, that wasn't the end of their report. We'll get that, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Deuteronomy chapter 1, verses 26 to 33, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.